Hi, I want to again welcome everybody. Today we're going to talk about preconditioning. Preconditioning cattle is a topic that is close to my heart because I've spent lots of hours arguing with my family about preconditioning. I come from kind of a traditional background, raised weaning calves. We'll also raise stalker calves and or feeder calves and stalker calves. And so preconditioning was something that historically had not been done in our operation. And when I came home from college at Texas Tech, excited about preconditioning and tried to present it to my family, there was a lot of backlash on that. And so what I'm going to present to you today is kind of what I found from talking to them and also at my previous employment discussing with producers about preconditioning. So we're going to spend some time talking about management. We're going to talk about diseases. And you're going to think, what does this have to do with nutrition? And then we'll end up talking about what's nutritional's role, and more importantly, what's Ranchway's role in this whole process. So if you have any questions, I have unmuted all your mics, so you should be able to ask a question. If for some reason it doesn't work and you can't, please email me or call me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. And we have a group here at Ranchway that we'll be discussing as well. So if they have any questions, I'll try to repeat their question. So I'm going to get started with our PowerPoint presentation now. And so you should be able to see my screen now in PowerPoint. If you can't, please let me know. But so I think we're going to start with a background and discuss. See if I can get the next slide to come up. We're going to talk a little bit about the beef industry because I think this ties into the problem, and we'll kind of talk about where some of the issues are. I like this slide because it shows all the different segments of the beef industry and what they do. So you have your calf up here, your cow-calf operation. You have your feedlot. You have the people, seed stock producers and who are more interested in genetics and producing bulls, and then you have all these different segments who are interested that produce a different product with different goals. And so if you look at the beef industry, you have your sheep stock producers, again, that produce high-end genetics. They sell those genetics to cow-calf producers. Well, some of the problem there is what our seed stock producers produce is not always what the genetics that work best out in the industry for the cow-calf producers. So there can be a segment there, a disconnect there. And the cow-calf producers, this would be like my family that's going to produce a weaned calf. Now, where I come from in Oklahoma and Texas, that weaned calf is going to be going to a stalker operation, or it can go into straight into a feedlot if it's a bigger calf. So we do a lot of stalker operation, Texas, Oklahoma. They'll go to wheat pasture or to summer pasture. And let me pause for a second. I didn't give the people here a handout. There you go. And so, and then you have your long yearlings that'll then go into the feedlot, and so a cow-calf producer, their main goal is to produce as many pounds because that's how they're paid. So they want to produce as many pounds as possible. And that's part of the problem is each one of these segments has to realize an advantage to preconditioning, or it's not going to work. And so there's been some programs that have been created recently to try to produce a product that has an economic advantage and then pass that premium back to your cow-calf producer. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then your feedlot guys, their goal is to get calves fed out and to produce a product that they can sell to a slaughter facility, which their goal is to produce a product that's going to be high-end for the consumer that the consumer wants. So really, as an industry, we should be driven by the consumer and what does the consumer want. But in reality, we're a segmented industry, and that creates a lot of problems. And I think preconditioning is important because of this segmented industry. And so we'll come back to that. So real quick, a definition of preconditioning. It's defined, this is a textbook definition, a vaccination, nutritional, and management program designed to prepare young cattle to best withstand the stresses of weaning and move on in that industry like we just talked about. So there's different ways to do it. There's different programs. So we'll kind of do a broad overview, maybe look specifically at a couple of programs, and then talk about how Ranchway fits into that. But I think, is there a question? There a question? Okay. I think the key here, though, is you have to add value to your stalker or feedlot producer. So the feedlot guys or your stalker guys have to have an added value that they're willing to pay a premium to cow-calf producer for preconditioning work. Otherwise, your cow-calf guy is stuck with the cost of feeding his cattle for 30 to 45 days, and if he's not paid a premium for that, it's not going to work. Now, anytime you talk about preconditioning, you have to talk about BRD, or shipping fever. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about BRD, what causes it, and then how preconditioning can help with that. So to define BRD real quick, it's an acute infectious disease of cattle characterized by fibrous bronchial pneumonia and caused by the interaction of bacteria, virus, and economic stress. And it's a three-pronged cause that causes BRD. And so we'll focus in on that here in just a minute. So the etiology or the cause of BRD is going to be both a virus, bacteria, and stress, and the interaction of those three. So we'll talk about that. The bacteria that cause BRD, it's Pasteurella, Haemophilus, Mycoplasma pneumonia, but these bugs are there all the time, and that's the key. They're there waiting for an opportunity to cause an infection. And it's the same as in other species. It's just that because of our segmented industry that we talked about, it really becomes amplified and becomes an issue in the beef industry. So these bacteria are there. They're just waiting for an opportunity. So what kickstarts this whole process is stress. And this can be the stress of weaning. This can be the stress of shipping cattle to sale barns, shipping them across the country. Some type of stress is what kickstarts this whole process. Stress makes the animal more susceptible to viral infections, which damage the respiratory surface, and that gives the bacteria an opportunity to grow. So the first key is stress. And stress is our natural hormones. Cortisol is an example. Those are stress hormones. And when you have an animal that's getting in a fight or flight mode, these hormones like cortisol, they inhibit the immune system, because when an animal's stressed and it's fighting to survive, its body thinks it's going to not worry about fighting disease. It's worried about surviving right now. So the natural hormones inhibit the immune system, so it weakens the immune system. It's the same thing with people. When I was teaching college, every year, finals time, when I'd hand out finals, those kids are stressed to the max, and then they're going to be coughing and sneezing, and everything's going around because they're stressed. Their immune system is inhibited, and so they start to get some colds and viral infections. And that same thing's happening in cattle. We're stressing our cattle. Maybe it's by weaning. And like my family, we would take our cattle you take them straight off wean them straight off the teat directly to the sale barn. And that's how they did it forever. And so you're taking animals, separating from its mom, one of the most stressful times in that animal's life, taking them to a sale barn where cattle are commingled all across the country, and they're passing bugs around that they don't have an immune system resistance to, and they're stressed, and so they can't fight the infections anyways. And so you're really creating an issue there. So stress is the first thing. What does stress do? Stress allows the animal to the viral infections, like a cold. Now the viral infections aren't going to kill the animal, but they're going to weaken the immune system further. So the causative organisms are spread from stressed animals to stressed animals by direct contact and aerosol. It's caused by mixing and close contact of cattle from a number of sources during weaning or shipping. So again, you wean that animal straight off the cow, you take it to the sale barn, and then you're going to mix these animals and get them in a close contact with each other, and they just spread these colds from animal to animal. All right, so these are some pictures that I took. Some calves. I would try when I taught college to buy animals that were going to get BRD, because I would do a whole series on this, and we would take calves and we'd try to get the sickest animals possible, and we would follow them, and then we would buy preconditioned cattle, and we kind of do a little research study to see how they grew and how they performed. But these are some animals that that have BRD, that have some issues. You can see that calf on the right it's a sick calf, not lethargic, not looking well. You have the large mucus, but I could throw some calves in here that we looked at that had 105, 106 feet temperature, but showed no symptoms, and that's the hard part. You can buy calves that you think look healthy. They don't have the stringy mucus like the one on the left. They don't look lethargic and sick like the one on the right, and just poor looking. But they're starting the BRD, and so it's one that's difficult. And it takes about a week or two before this shows up. And so when you buy these sick calves and bring in your place, in all the years that we did it, looked at it in small research trials, 7 days later you start what I would call a storm. You get a BRD storm where it just starts, and it starts with one, and it just starts. You just start seeing like a domino effect of these calves becoming sick. All right. So once you get your stress, you get the viral infection. That weakens the immune system, which allows those bacteria that we talked about to cause pneumonia. So it's that three-pronged approach: stress, viral infection, commingling, spreading that cold, and then that weakens the immune system, causes lesions in the lungs, which allows the bacteria to take over, and you get the pneumonia, which is what causes death. Okay, so what can we do to prevent it? Well, we know it's a three-pronged approach. One thing that we can do is we have good vaccines today, so we can vaccinate. Now, another problem that my family would make is we would vaccinate right at the time of stress. And again, I just told you that stress weakens the immune system. And so because it weakens the immune system, they can't respond to that vaccine as well. Also, it takes time to build up antibody titers to that vaccine. So you don't want to vaccinate right at the time of stress. So you don't want to vaccinate at weaning. You're not going to have as good of an immune response to that vaccine. So you want to vaccinate 45 days prior to weaning. And then a lot of people revaccinate at weaning. I'd make an argument that maybe you want to, if you can, you want to give a booster before weaning even. That way at weaning, you've had your vaccine, you've had your booster. That's the best way to get protection. But at the least, you want to vaccinate 45 days prior to weaning. You could bump that up and say 30 days before weaning if you wanted to. I think this is something that's left out when we talk about preventing respiratory diseases, bunk training. You look at my family, those calves, we didn't do a lot of creep feeding. We'll talk about creep feeding in another presentation, but we didn't do a lot of creep feeding. But so they didn't know what feed was. They didn't know what a bunk was. And so I think it's important to bunk train before weaning. Show them what a bunk is and give them a little bit of feed. And that way, when it comes time to wean, they're not just taken from their mom. They don't know where the feed is. They don't know what's going on, but they've seen feed, they've seen a bunk, and they know what it is. So that's going to be important for our preconditioning program as well as bunk training these calves. All right, now if you look at the lots of data, it's going to tell you that single source cattle and reduced commingling is going to reduce BRD. I know I got to be careful about this because I know there's a lot of people out there who own sale barns who sell cattle at sale barns. So not saying that buying cattle for sale barns, you can't make it work, but obviously if you're commingling cattle like that, you're going to increase your chances of getting BRD and getting respiratory problems. But if you can go straight from the farm to your place, that's the best way to do it. A lot of video auctions now, that's great. Buy those cattle off video auction. You can take them straight from the farm to your place, and you're not commingling them. You're not spreading these viruses from calf to calf. Source verify. That's important. Observe new arrivals closely. Like I said, the day you get them, usually that's not when they get sick. It's a few days later, a week later, maybe even 10 days later when you start to see these problems. So it takes a while for that. They start to get a little cold, kind of like you start to feel a little sick. And then it takes a while before that pneumonia bacteria that we talked about that cause pneumonia, for that to settle in when you get your true pneumonia. Also remember that these calves may not show any symptoms. Again, we've looked at thousands of cattle over the years in my classes, and we would see a lot of cattle that showed no outward signs of infection that actually had BRD, that would be running 105, 106, or 7, 8 fever. And so obviously they had an infection. They just didn't show any signs. Now, good nutrition. So we'll come back to nutrition at the end, but that's important. We're going to talk about things that we can do nutrition-wise to prevent BRD, and there are some things that we can do. We want to set these cattle up to respond to their vaccine and to be able to fight these bugs that they are exposed to, these viruses. And so they're going to be exposed to them. There's no getting around that. The thing is, how can we help them best get through it? So you want to vaccinate 45 days, show them what a bunk is, give them good nutrition, and if you can, prevent commingling. And I'm a big believer in sick pens. I think if you can take these calves, treat them, and put them off by themselves until they get better, that's best. A lot of people can't do that. But if you can have a sick pen and get them out, and that's going to prevent the spread of this causative agents from calf to calf. All right. So I want to make sure that we're still online here and going good. So if you have any questions, please, I'm going to go ahead make sure all of y'all have your mics off. If you have, or you're not muted. So if you have any questions at all, please answer. Just stop me. And same thing with you guys here. Just let me know. Everybody should be unmuted, so just let me know if you have a question or want to talk about something. And we'll have some questions later. A time for questioning. All right. So let me get this blown up real quick. I'm not. Come on. Give me 1 second. Sorry, guys. So let's go right there. For some reason, I can't. There we go. Okay. So, move this over in case y'all can't see. Okay. So, we already talked about some of these points. So let's move on. All right, so now we can talk a little bit about preconditioning and how it plays into preventing BRD, because really that's what preconditioning is. We're trying to set these calves up to be successful after weaning, and the main thing is going to be preventing sickness. So how do we add value with preconditioning? We talked about you have to add value. This isn't going to work unless we add value to those weaned calves. And the stalker guys, the feedlot guys, they're not going to pay a premium unless they can see a benefit. And so I'm going to show you some data from some big studies at multiple universities that really show that this does work and you do see an effect. So how do we add value in preconditioning? Number one, we decrease sickness. That's been shown. I'll show you the data at the end. I'm going to show you kind of the overview and then show you, if you're a numbers guy, some of the numbers that back this up. But you're going to see increased weight gain. If they're not sick, they're going to be eating, they're going to be drinking, and they're going to gain weight. You improve feed efficiency. Cattle that are sick have their feed efficiency they're not as efficient in converting feed to gain. You decrease drug use and labor and increase beef quality. I'll show you some data where they actually follow these cattle that got BRD, and those that were not sick and didn't get BRD, they have improved quality. So we'll talk about that. So I'll ask the people here and anybody who's online who wants to answer, what's the most important measure affecting feedlot profitability? What do you think it is? What's the most important thing? Out of big studies that they've done, what affects the money that those feedlot guys make, the profit of those guys more than anything else? What do you think? Weight gain? Yeah, weight gain would be, because obviously they want to get them to their target weight as fast as possible. What else? Anybody got anything else? Feed efficiency, yep. And all those are true, but the number one thing that affects both of those would be sickness. And sickness has been shown because they can't gain if they're fighting. If they're spending 2 weeks in the sick pen, they can't gain weight. They're not going to be efficient. So sickness was actually the number one thing that affected profitability. So how does sickness affect, so I told you it affects carcass quality. How would sickness affect carcass quality? Carcass quality is the amount of beef that grades choice, that has good quality, that you get a premium for. How would sickness affect that? They don't eat as much, so they don't marble. That's right. Jamie said that they don't eat as much and they don't marble. That's right. You have to eat the marble. Marble's fat, so you have to have take in energy to put in marbling. And that's right. Those cattle don't marble because they go off feed. So how's this related to preconditioning? All the things that we talked about in BRD, and we're going to outline them here in a minute, those are going to affect sickness. All right. So we can vaccinate. So preconditioning, things that we're going to do, we're going to vaccinate. We already talked about that a little bit, at least 45 days before. We can deworm, and we want to provide diets that are going to increase disease resistance. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. What can we do as a feed company to help increase disease resistance? Okay, weaning. We want to wean 30 to 45 days before. 30 to 45 days before we sell. We want to castrate, dehorn, and we want to have them eating out of a bunk. Why? To reduce stress at weaning. So 30 to 45 days, we're going to take our calves and we're going to wean them. We're going to go ahead and castrate them. I would recommend you castrate them and dehorn them as early as possible. We did some studies while I was at OSU and when I was at Cameron, that we looked at when the best time to castrate is, and castrating early as possible really does reduce stress, and it's actually going to affect the growth of that calf even through the feedlot phase, but certainly through the stalker phase in the early feedlot phase. You're going to have less gain if you castrate them later in life because they're stressed, they go off feed. And so we could talk about that in another presentation as well. But weaning, castrate, dehorning, have them eating out of a bunk, and have them on a good diet 30 to 45 days before you sell them. That's the key. Again, my family did the opposite of this. We weaned them. When we weaned them, we would castrate them. We cut their horns off, and if they had horns, and we'd take them to the sell barn. So they have just got their they were just castrated. They just have their horns removed. They're looking for mama. They don't know what this stuff in a bunk is, and we wanted them to do well. So that we did the exact opposite. So 30 to 45 days, you want to do these things. That way, when you ship them, when they're going to be commingled, you're reducing that stress. Another thing is a shrink. That's lost weight. Shrink, the average sick animal shrinks 10 to 20%. And that's you. If you are a stock or feedlot guy and you pay for that calf per pound, you lose 10 to 20% of that weight automatically if they're sick. So you've already lost 10 to 20% of their weight, and they got to make that up. So that's another big loss for your stocker and feedlot guys. All right, so what do we do? For young calves, I have 1 to 3 months. I have a question mark. I'm a big believer in waiting to vaccinate. I know there's some people that would disagree with me on that. I like to wait until that calf has a functional immune system set up, not a functional immune system, but immune system that can respond to those vaccines that we're going to give them. So I have a question mark there. But at 4 months of age, you want to vaccinate for respiratory disease. We have some awesome vaccines out there. You can give kill vaccines or intranasal. So work with your either sales rep for the pharmaceutical companies or your vet and get on a program. I'm not going to say that one company's vaccine is better than the other, but just make sure you're vaccinating for respiratory diseases. That would include IBR, PI3, Pasteurella, and Haemophilus. You also want to vaccinate for any clostridial diseases at this time. So your blackleg, for example. Older calves, if you don't do this at 4 months of age, you want to do this 3 to 4 weeks before you wean. Again, we don't want to do it at weaning because we're stressing them. The natural hormones are going to inhibit the immune system, which we already talked about. So we want to give we want to vaccinate, 3 to 4 weeks before weaning. If you did it at 4 months of age, here you're going to give your booster. So you're going to give them a booster, and then now going into weaning, you don't have to do anything. So we don't have to vaccinate. We've already castrated, hopefully. We've already dehorned. So at weaning, those calves can just focus on eating and getting over missing mama. All right. So let's talk about management a little bit. In our management goals, to reduce stress, because remember, stress is the first step in this three-pronged approach to causing BRD. Stress weakens the immune system, then you get the virus, then you get the bacterial infection. So our goal is to reduce stress. So again, we want to dehorn as young as possible. We want to castrate as young as possible. I can give you lots of data on that. Another thing that I've argued with my family about, a lot of people want to wait. They think if you leave the testes on there that they'll grow better. I actually have some research that we did and other people that shows that the opposite of that is true. You don't want to castrate as young as possible. You don't want to wait to castrate. Castrating as young as possible is going to reduce stress. And then we looked at different methods of castration too. So if you're interested, I can go over some of that with you another time. All right, 2 to 3 weeks before weaning at the latest, you want to do these things. So we don't want to castrate at weaning, even if you're preconditioning. So we're going to 30 to 45 days before we sell them. We're going to we're going to go ahead and wean them before we sell them. But you still don't want to wean and castrate and dehorn at the same time because I understand a lot of people don't bring their cattle up that much, especially larger outfits. So it may not be possible, but if you can at branding, castrate, dehorn as early as possible. All right, now I have pen or pasture size, and this is I've played with this personally, and I'm not sure what's best, to be honest with you. I've let them in have them in a small pasture where they can walk the fence, and mama's there. The problem is what I've found is they continue to walk the fence, and so in my opinion, they're burning calories that way. So I like to pen wean and put them in a pen with a bunk. Make sure you have plenty of space. I have size there. You want plenty of space, plenty of bunk space where your low cattle that are low on the pecking order can be sure and get in there the bunk and into the water. So I like pen weaning, but a lot of people pasture wean. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just I find that they're walking back and forth and burning a lot of calories if you pasture. But a lot of people make it work, and I've done it myself, so it does work. All right, now let's look at nutrition. So we've done all that. We talked about management things, vaccination. Now, what can we do nutrition-wise? Well, number one, we have to teach them to eat. Some of these cattle, especially if you're weaning early, they've been eating a little bit of grass and a little bit of what mama eats, but we really have to teach them that's where your nutrition's coming from now. Mom's not there, you're weaned, you have to eat. So hopefully they've eaten a little bit of hay or grass and they know what forage is. And so we want to provide a hay and a supplement. What I like to do is put the hay on the bottom of the bunk, and then I put the supplement on top. So they eat through that supplement into the hay, especially if you haven't creep feed and they don't know what that is. Some people don't do it that way, but I've found that works pretty well. If you put the hay on the bottom, put your supplement on top, and they'll eat through that. And we're going to talk a little bit here in a minute. That supplement has to be palatable, something that they like. That when they taste that for the first time, man, that's good. I want to go after more of that. So we'll talk about that later. But you want to train them to eat out of a bunk, and that to me, in my opinion, that's a great way to do it. You want to have adequate bunk space, like I said before. If you're a numbers guy, you want 8 to 24 inches per head. So you want to have plenty of space, and that's a lot of space if you're weaning a lot of cattle. But that's going to give even those more timid calves space to go up there and eat and have room to eat. And you don't want too little space at the bunk, or those timid calves get pushed out and they're not getting enough to eat, because that's going to affect the immune system and cause more stress. All right, so we place again the hay at the bottom bunk, put the feed on top. You want to wean and feed for 45 days before marketing. Again, this is going to give us a premium because these calves, they know what a bunk is. Immune system is going to be functional, and hopefully those stalker and feedlot guys are going to pay a premium. All right.
I got a question, sir.
Yeah, shoot.
When you were talking about castrating, we've been kind of having this discussion on those calves. Earlier is better. I agree with you. We castrate right now with a knife. What's your thoughts on either banding them or cutting them?
Okay, we did a research study to address that question. We had a really large ranch that's owned by a doctor in Oklahoma, and he had that same question. And so we looked at a couple thousand calves. And what we found was if you do it early, well, let's just back up. Knife cutting is going to be more stressful on the animal in the immediate, but they get over it, they respond, they go back to the bunk faster. They start eating faster if you knife cut. Banding is going to be a longer period. They go off feed for a longer time. If you do it young, you can do either. It doesn't affect the average daily gain at all. If you wait until later in life, when those calves are bigger, there's no doubt that knife cutting is better because they go back on feed faster. So if, let's say, you're bringing them into a backgrounding yard or preconditioning and you didn't castrate your calves, you want a knife cut because those calves will get back on feed faster and they'll gain faster. If you band them, it's not that initial shock, but when you band them, they're going to go off feed for a long period of time, and it actually affected average daily gain and even carcass quality in some studies later in life if you do it really late. So if you got big bulls, you want to castrate and not band.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, and then that's going to be that's a tough one too because it depends on how you're cutting. We always just use the knife and just cut, but there's some emasculators and some of those things that can cut down on bleeding. Those big bulls, those will certainly help too. So I like an emasculator. I like, but there's different techniques. I don't like to. I cut the sack off, grab the testicle, and I pull it out. I like to do that because you don't get that severance of the blood vessels and that clean cut, and they bleed more. Some veterinarians disagree with me on that, but that's how I like to do it.
I agree with you.
All right. So, any other questions? So, y'all feel free to stop. I'm glad. Thanks for asking a question. It also lets me know that we're working. I was a little bit nervous that I'm not sure what y'all can see. So, okay. So, what is the key to get producers like my family to start preconditioning their calves? Number one, there has to be a premium. My in-laws, not just my family, but my in-laws too, they are not going to do it unless they get paid a premium. They have to feel like they're getting paid for their time and money. And it does. It costs money to precondition. They're having to feed those cattle for 45 days. And some programs are 30 days. But 30 to 45 days, that's a long time. That's a lot of money. They got to feel like they're getting paid for that in addition to just average daily gain, how much weight they put on. So a premium is going to be key. And then also the stalker and feedlot guys, they have to feel like they're getting something that's worth paying a premium for. So really it's a balance between producing something that has value to the buyers, and then that part of that is passed back to the cow calf guy. So here's some real data looking at some studies. Now some of these studies, I mean, they're 10 years old or so. Maybe that one's 15 years old, but I think they still hold true. When we get into like profitability, those numbers would be even more amplified today, but these are good numbers. So this is looking about 17,000 head of cattle. You can see the number of cattle that were healthy, 12,306. The number of sick, 4,047. You can see what was the medicine cost, $27 per head for medicine. What was the difference in average daily gain? The healthy cattle gained 2.99. The sick cattle gained 2.67. Now you may say, well, that's only a third a pound, but every 3 days you're getting an extra pound of gain in that feedlot. So that may not sound like much, but when you're feeding out, thousands of head of cattle, that's a lot of money. You look at your net return, so this would be even more amplified today, but $67 a head return on the healthy cattle. The sick cattle lost $20 per head. So it's a almost $90 difference by those sick. So anything that we can do to prevent those calves from being sick is going to greatly affect the bottom line in the feedlot. Look at those that graded choice. This is what I was talking about earlier. 39 or almost 40% graded choice in the healthy, only 27% graded choice in the sick. So again, just like Jamie said, they're not eating, so they can't take in the energy to grade choice. So you gain less, so you're gonna have lighter weight carcasses that aren't as high quality, and so so obviously the more animals we can get healthy, the better. So now let's look more directly at preconditioning. I'm not sure how big this is on your screen. Hopefully you can see it. But if you look at the performance, feedlot cattle, the non-preconditioned and the preconditioned, you look at weight gain, the non-preconditioned cattle, they gained more. And you may think that doesn't make sense, but a lot of something called compensatory gain, where you take poor cattle and they gain faster. You look at days on feed, though, they were on feed for 220 days compared to preconditioned 180. That's important. These feedlot guys, they want to get them out of the feedlot as fast as possible. And so they want to get them to market weight. And so those non-preconditioned cattle, they were in the feedlot longer. You look at average daily gain, if you guys are logged in can see it, it's 3 pounds per day for preconditioned, 2.8 pounds for non-preconditioned. So they gained more, the preconditioned cattle did. You look at medicine costs, non-preconditioned, they spent $34 a head on medicine, where preconditioned they only spent $4. So that's the $30 difference right there. You look at death loss, and this is the important one right here, especially look at cost of cattle right now. Death loss is so important. Non-preconditioned cattle, 4.44% of them died, where only 1.3%. So you had a 3% difference in death loss, and that's important. If you're talking about 100 head of cattle, that's 3 calves you lost. If you look at today's price, that's substantial. And you look at down to the economics. Let's just jump down to the very bottom. The preconditioned cattle, they're going to the difference was $60. They made you $60 more per head. So there is a premium there for these feedlot and stalker guys, and that's why they're willing to pay for preconditioned cattle, because they know that they're going to have to doctor less are going to die, they're going to gain better, and you're going to get a higher quality carcass. All right, one more last study. This is another study, and this is actually an older study, but I like it. And if you go through it, same thing that we just showed. They're going to gain more. Preconditioned cattle are. They're going to have less cost, and so the difference in value here, even going back, almost 20 years now, was still $56 a head difference. So they're going to make you money. So there's a value there that we can get. If you look at now, okay, this is looking at a survey of feedlot feeders, and this is what, in their experience, preconditioned calves, if looking at their individual feedlots, these managers reported 9% sick in preconditioned calves, 36% sick in non-preconditioned calves. Death loss, again, 1.5, very similar to what we saw before, and 4.3, a 3% difference, almost 3% in preconditioning. Average daily gain was higher, again, about a third a pound. That's pretty consistent. You seem to get about a third a pound more average daily gain, and about 3% decrease in death loss. And again, percent that graded choice, was higher in preconditioned calves. So it's definitely adding a premium. So we'll skip through some of these and we'll go on. So it's there. So let's look at some of the programs that are out there. So that some of these companies, especially pharmaceutical companies, have done a good job of kind of trying to take these programs, create a program where you use whatever pharmaceutical companies vaccinations, and then hopefully they can get you a premium. So let me try to bring this back up where y'all can see it. All right, hopefully you can see that now. We'll see. Let's try. All right, so here is for example, a very common one, Select Vac, and you can see basically you're going to. I'm having a problem. There we go. You're gonna use their vaccination program. This is put on by Pfizer. I'm sorry, Zoetis now, and you're going to use their Select Vac program. And so you're going to use their vaccine. Some of these programs you have to have a vet or somebody sign off that you did vaccinate your calves, or a vet has to do it. But a lot of them you can get a vet you buy your vaccines from the vet, and he'll sign off that you did give your calves these vaccines. But this is there's basically the Select Vac, and there's a couple other programs that Pfizer has as well. But this is their data here going through 2011, and I'm going to try to move this. There we go. And you can see looking at preconditioned calves. So this was looking at no program, their pre-vac program, or their wean vac program. And you can see the difference. And there is a premium there, a price difference. And so not only is it a premium for the feedlot guy, but the cow-calf guy is getting a premium here as well. And so this one is a $64 premium to your cow-calf guy on a 504-pound calf. So there is a premium there, and these programs have been created. In Oklahoma, which is where I come from, the OSU has developed a program as well called Oklahoma Beef Quality Network, and that's not with any specific pharmaceutical company, but they have sales throughout the state where you follow their guidelines. It's certified that you vaccinated, you did all these things we talked about to reduce stress, and they are seeing a premium there as well. So there's across the United States, there's different programs that you can get involved with. Let me pull up one more here. Here's the list of different programs that are out there. This is just on Beef Stalker USA, and you can see there's a lot of different preconditioning programs that you can belong to. There's one in Iowa, there's one in Missouri, Montana Beef Network, then Noble Foundation, which is a foundation in Oklahoma, and Pfizer's, which is now Zoetis, Select Vac. So there's a lot of different programs. Superior has one, Value Added Calf. So yeah, there's a lot of different programs that you can become involved in. This list is a little bit old. There's even more, and some of these have changed names now, but lots of opportunities to get involved. All right, so real quick, I want to go through as I bring this back up. Let's talk about what we can do at Ranchway and what is Ranchway's goal and role in preconditioning. So number one, if I can get the first point to come up. All right, we want to have a highly palatable diet. I have this first for a reason. I think this is important. When they first see feed, you want something that's very highly palatable. And some of the diets that we'll talk about here in a minute that we've put together, they are highly palatable. So you want ingredients that are very palatable, something that when these calves see it, man, that tastes good. I want to eat some more of that. You want to have nutrient dense. You want it nutrient dense because we're going to feed them just a little bit. They're not going to eat a lot starting off, but you want them to get all the nutrients they need in a very small amount. So it needs to be very nutrient dense and very highly palatable. Antibiotics. Now, we're going to have the rules are going to change on using antibiotics and feed in the future, but right now you can use antibiotics, and so that's it's a great tool to prevent BRD. And we can use things like aureomycin or just a tetracycline, chlorotetracycline to prevent BRD. So you can include CTC, for example, 350 milligrams per head per day, and that does help with preventing BRD and also improves gain. Decox, So we want, you can use antibiotics, you can use Decox. So we're going to try to control some of those things that can cause stress and affect average daily gain. Trace minerals. If you look at the research on trace minerals, it's all over the board. But I think the key is these organic trace minerals. There can be an effect, especially at times when you see stress on an animal. And so if animals are healthy and everything's going good, no, you may not see an effect. And the same thing, we'll talk about prebiotics and probiotics here in just a second. These things aren't going to, you may not see an effect if everything's going good and there's no sickness, but it's when things fall apart, that's when you're going to see an effect of trace minerals and prebiotics and probiotics. So we have inorganic trace minerals, you have organic trace minerals, you have another class, hydroxy trace minerals, and organic and hydroxy, they're increasing absorption, increasing those trace minerals. Things like copper, zinc, and manganese have been shown to influence immune function. And so we want to make sure that we're getting the correct amount of trace minerals to that animal so he can have the best immune system and ability to fight these bacteria and viruses as possible, because they're going to be exposed to these viruses. And so what we're trying to do is set them up for success. Prebiotics and probiotics, I think we certainly have some of these we'll talk about here in a minute. Prebiotics are basically, you can look at them as kind of like food for the good bacteria in the gut, and then the probiotics would be good bacteria, good yeast, good bugs that we're populating the gut with. And so there's been some research there that have shown effect, especially at times, again, of stress. So when an animal's stressed, like during weaning, that's when you're going to more than likely see an effect of these prebiotics and probiotics as well. So we want to do all these things in our feeding program. And so we have some diets at Ranch Way, and I'll pull some of them up now that certainly that can have an effect. So we'll go through a few of these real quick. Well, y'all can't see it. Hold on a second. Give me just a second. Well, okay, y'all should be able to see it now. Just a minute to start up. So we're going to look at, again, some of the diets that we have at Ranch Way that have done all the things we just talked about. The first one would be a high energy receiving diet. It's the R31 or 3111 CP. That's a high energy diet, so it's nutrient dense. It's 14% crude protein. It's going to have all of your trace minerals, and it's going to be kind of a base diet that you could use for this situation. 14% crude protein, high energy, nutrient dense, highly palatable diet. So now if you go back and let me just, I'm not sure where to put that. Which orange? Oh, right here? Oh, that's a good idea. Thanks. Okay, now let's go over here and let's look at a couple of others. So we'll kind of step up in some of the, we're going to add a few more things to it. So I'm going to go to beef feeds if you get on our website, ranchway.com, and I'm going to go down to range feeds. And so we talked about the 14% high energy. Now let's talk about, we also have our 15% medicated. So the 15% medicated is going to have Decox in it, and then we have a 15% premium calf creep, which you can continue to feed during your preconditioning program, and that's going to have our biomass, which is going to be again a prebiotic. So it's going to have biomass, and it's also going to have Aveilla in it, and Aveilla is going to be let me go back. Aveilla is going to be an organic trace mineral. So we have an organic trace mineral here. And the organic trace mineral, we're going to take that trace mineral, attach it to an amino acid, which is going to increase the absorption of that trace mineral across the gut. And so we got our trace minerals there, the copper, zinc, and we've increased those levels because they've been shown to improve immune function. We got a prebiotic there, which has been shown to improve immune function and also prevent some of the digestive disturbances that come along with creep feeding and adjusting to this new diet. So I think this, again, is a time, if you want to spend the money on creep feed, if you're going to spend the money on prebiotics and trace minerals, this is certainly a time that you're going to get your money's worth. We also have a probiotic in this one, yeast sac, which is going to be populate the gut with yeast, kind of like when you eat, if in humans we've heard a lot about eating yogurt Activia, things like that. Same principle here. We're putting good yeast in the gut to populate the gut, which is going to inhibit the growth of the bad bacteria, which can cause digestive disturbances. And we've added a little bit of B vitamins, which is also going to support immune function. So this would we start off with the 14% HE. We have some in between, and this would be kind of the high-end diet that you could use for that. So I guess that's pretty much all I have. I'll open it up for questions. If y'all have any questions that you want to discuss, let me know. We can discuss those now, but I think it's just kind of a real quick summary. Preconditioning, the idea is to prevent stress 30 to 45 days before in both management, vaccination, but in nutrition, we want to provide them with something that's going to give them the best immune function, but also we want them to gain. That's something I didn't talk about. We want them to gain weight. It's not just about getting them to eat out of a bunk for 45 days and maintain their weight. You want them gaining, you want them gaining good. And I think these products that we have at Ranchway will do that and help you get off to on the right track. And again, our premium here that has the probiotics and the trace minerals, that's going to give you the best, that calf, the best ability to fight disease. And again, you're not going to prevent disease. But we're trying, while we're weaning them, while they're stressed, we're trying to just set them up to fight those viruses, and hopefully you stop it there and it doesn't continue on to pneumonia. So I appreciate your time. Hopefully it was worth it. If you have any suggestions, please send me an email. If any topics also, please send me an email. The next one we'll talk about next month is going to be, we'll talk a little bit about supplementing. We'll talk about high protein supplements. We'll talk about substitution as well when you supplement. And so we'll spend some time on talking about supplementing next month. But does anybody have any questions? Well, if not, I appreciate it. Thank you. And again, send me an email if you want to talk about this, or give me a call and we can certainly talk about it more. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here, and we will pick up next month with talking about supplementing. Thank you.